I've been on the road, I've been doing shows. Now we eating steak, remember sleeping on the floor.
Welcome to Grove City today. I'm Bryan Mulvany.
I'm Alex Rogers.
And we have a special guest with us today. It's our third episode. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Today we have Christine Houk with us. Wears lots of different hats. Christine, I certainly don't want to, tell people what I think of you. How do you introduce yourself, right, with all the hats that you wear?
Well, I am first and foremost, proud Grove City resident, and I am glad to be invited here this morning because I think that's probably the biggest piece of my personality and the reason you extended the invitation.
Sure.
Grove City is very special to me, as I know it is to both of you, and I guess I'll start off by thanking you for thinking of me in this venture and giving you my 2 cents worth is the two of you, who are a few years younger than me, are what I consider the next generation's example of rolling up your sleeves and getting involved in building community. And I think this project kind of speaks to that. So I'm pleased to be here. Have lived in Grove City since we made the decision to buy our first house and we closed and moved in the beginning of 1994.
There you go.
So since that time, Grove City resident, ultimately started a business with my husband, which is right next door. I literally thought when I was leaving, oh, you got to leave your phone here. But then I thought, I'm probably going to be in range of my phone. So if my phone rings, it is over there.
I can tell when my wife is pulled into the car.
That's right.
When I pull her car into the garage, it picks up whatever audio book she was listening to, and sometimes appropriate, sometimes kids are in the car, and I'm like,
no,
push the button.
That's right. So yeah, I think that my love for Grove City has kind of what snowballed the decision to have a business here, and then also triggered a lot of involvement in the community. Although I will say that probably community involvement was my love language I think I was brought up that way. So I've had moments in our marriage where my husband says, just say no.
Yeah.
And
we all struggle with that.
And you I probably preaching to the choir on that front.
Where are you originally from?
So I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and moved around a lot in my early childhood and spent most of my growing up years in Newark, Delaware. And that's Newark.
Not Newark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we moved, my family moved to Lancaster, and so I went to Lancaster High School for only my senior year of high school.
What is that part of the country like? Like the Delaware, Vermont, Maine?
So I would have been mostly in the Maryland, Delaware, Virginia area. So kind of in the central East Coast. And it was, I always describe it as the very best place for field trips. Right. We went on a million field trips to New York City and Washington, D.C. and, Gettysburg and just lots of short bus rides from there to amazing sites and great. I was a hyper involved high school student, and that was the hardest part of kind of like transitioning to only a senior year at a school where you're the new girl and people kind of wanted you to say words just so they could hear your accent. Yeah, that was kind of
there you go.
that was kind of my
especially in Lancaster.
Year. Yeah,
at that time.
Everybody, that's right. Everybody had and I talked about that recently, how much that area has changed.
Oh yeah.
Since we used to go out to Memorial Drive 33 and cruise on the weekends. It's changed. Like the whole region really has grown exponentially since that time. So,
well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah,
pleased to be here.
Yeah.
Would you say too? I was thinking about hometowns. As far as, where you grew up on the East Coast, is it the same hometown feel, same hometown pride? Is that a thing where you grew up like it is strong here?
Yeah, I would say yes. Newark, Delaware is the home of University of Delaware, so so kind of that college town vibe a little bit. I have learned, I think moving around kind of gives you that perspective of how much people are attached to the place that they're from. It's interesting to me how, I mean, now we have so many new people living in the city of Grove City. So it isn't just all people that have been here their whole life. So it's an amazing blend of people that, you know, that loved it because this is where they were born and this is what they know. And those that really just came and fell in love with Grove City. You know, the conversation about best hometown to me, which, you know, it's lovely to get that accolade, but the best hometown is really something that people carry with them, you know. And in my conversations with people in the community, I just love to hear all the different reasons that people find this to be such a special place. And I will just go, like, when we were making our decision, Alan and I, of, you know, where we want to raise our family, we were really shopping suburbs. He had lived in Hilliard, I lived in Dublin, and we were like, where do we want to land? What's the choice that we want to make? And really, just every time we were in Grove City, we had this feeling of, you know, that small towns are like big families, and even though this community since that time, 30 some years ago, has grown like crazy. It has been amazing to me that it has been able to really retain that, you know, that kind of, everybody knows each other on some level, maybe not as personally as it was many years ago. But I talk about when we did our project next door, kind of revamping the front of our building, I was at the post office and some guy's like, "Oh, it looks great." And I'm like, "Thank you," you know, and I'm like, I have no idea who that was. And he was like, "You're going to plant flowers?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, there'll be flowers." And he was like, "What about a rocker on the front porch?" And I'm like, "Well, like I said, to be honest with you, a rocker on the front porch on Broadway, I probably wouldn't get any work done at all." Right. But I said, "But yeah, there definitely will be flowers, sir." But people were keeping their eye on the progress. And so even those that you don't know feel that kind of connection. And I don't think that there's any real way to define that. It really just, to me, is something that we have in spades. And it's so important to hold on to me. Yeah.
Where is Alan from?
He is actually originally from Barberton, Ohio. Okay. And he had a similar move around and went to high school in Puerto Rico. His dad had gone and worked in Puerto Rico. Okay. He tells the story of he got into Notre Dame and he says, "I'm pretty sure it was because they needed somebody from every area." Puerto Rico. That's right. Puerto Rico, check, you know. So he kind of thinks that was his segue. But yeah, and I think, you know, for us, that kind of move around upbringing is really kind of contributed to our, we want there to be that place, even though neither one of my kids are here anymore. They love being here, and we want them to continue to come home. It's
funny you talk about that part of the country. So one of my best friends in the world is from Bowie, Maryland. And so we went out to visit them for the first time. And so I'm like 15, 16 maybe. I'm meeting his family for the first time, and his mom and his dad, and like seeing where he's from, right? They had been to Grove City, and we went out there for the first time. So his mom had never been to Columbus, and she says, "Hey, I want to take you to College Park. Like, I want to show you a college university," right? And so she takes us to College Park, and I'm 15, 16. I'm trying to be polite. I'm meeting this lady for the first time, and she goes, "This is a real college football stadium." And I said, Yeah, this is nice, you know? And then so years later, she comes to Columbus, and she's in the car with my mom and dad on 315, and she's passing one exit for Ohio State's campus, and she's passing another exit for Ohio State's campus, and then they took her to the shoe, and she's like, "What is this?" And she goes, "Well, this is where Ohio State," my mom said, "This is where Ohio State plays." And this woman comes back to my mom's house, and she's around the pool, and she goes, "Bryan, I need to apologize." She's like, "And I need to thank you for not telling me, like, yes, Jill, I have seen a college football stadium before. I live in Columbus. There's one of the biggest ones ever."
Proof
here,
once again that perspective is everything.
And it was just kind of one of those things, like, as a kid, you know, I laugh about it now, but
politely said,
yeah.
yes, that's a lovely
Yeah,
place
that's
to play.
nice. Yeah, some of the high school stadiums in Columbus are
That's right.
the same
Right,
size
the
as
same
this one.
size.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yes.
a
Too
small
funny.
world. Yeah, I actually got a job. He convinced me to interview at Phillips Crab Shack out in Ocean City.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we both got offered jobs, and I backed out like 2 weeks before we were supposed to start.
Too funny.
They were going to put like 8 guys in a room like the size that we're in right now, and I said,
wow. You're like, no,
I was like,
thanks.
I'm good.
Not for me.
He's a
Yeah.
redhead.
Yeah. Jason.
We hung out in the basement.
Yeah, to be more specific.
In high school, in your basement.
Probably.
That's where I met him there.
Yeah.
He had just come.
Yep. So we flew out and interviewed, and I just didn't want to do it. I just chickened out. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's pretty cool. Now, I always wonder about perspectives. You know, people like yourself, you know, that are well enveloped in the community, and versus, you know, people like Bryan and I. Our perspective of, okay, actually. So, for an example, yesterday we were at Murphy Fields with the kids playing a soccer tournament, and he said something, and I'm like, oh, why don't you just go fill your water bottle up at the pumps at the the spigot. And he's like, Dad, he's never done that before. He didn't know it was a thing. He's like, oh,
Right.
you know, why don't we have one of these outside at our house? Why don't we, you know?
Right.
And I was like, well, you know, I mean, early 90s, I was getting water here from my water bottle sort of thing. So, you know, seeing my kids going through, you know, back through what we went through as kids, the same spots, the same schools, everything else,
Right.
you know, we have those memories tied with it. And I guess, you know, home is kind of where you make it. So you raised your children here, right?
Right.
And so, I don't know, coming from being a little kid and now going through, you know, the age that we are now, versus somebody who moved here later on in life, you know, you wonder how those ties, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have more stories.
You
know?
absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And your stories that you tell your children, you have to work a little harder to put a face on it.
Right.
Whereas that they're right there with you experiencing it. And I experienced Grove City right along with my kids.
Yeah. Right.
Effectively.
Right.
We found our way together.
Right. My
Yeah.
sister lives in DC. And before that, she lived in Austin for a few years. You know, had one of her kids in Austin, and so they're experiencing it with the children.
Right.
You know, as they go.
Right.
And I don't know. I've never had that feeling to where, you know, hey, let's go back to Dad's hometown, kind of like my sister has to with her kids. So
Right.
It's interesting.
You made the thing about Murphy and filling up water bottles. So we had the first in our new neighborhood. We had the first swing set. So my mom always said, "Put the swing set in your backyard. That way you get to know everybody's
kids." Right.
And so they would all like bring water bottles, or they would ask like for drinks. And I'm a germaphobe about like if you're outside, stay outside. So I taught them how to drink from the hose the other day, so that when they got thirsty, I was like, "No, we're just gonna go down. We're gonna drink from the hose." And they looked at me like, "What?
Right.
I turned the hose on. I held it right there, and they all just kind of looked at me for a second. I was like, "Kara, it's like, come over here and take a drink out of this." She's like, "It's gonna get all over my shirt." I'm like, "That's okay."
That's okay.
And they all thought after they took a drink out of the hose, they thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I thought to myself, I probably should have asked parents before.
Now you don't
You know what I
worry
mean?
about them playing on your swing set because they're never going.
No. So I thought to myself, you know, I hope not, like, I don't know. I just hope none of them get sick. Maybe I should have asked parents first, but I didn't care. At that point, I was like, we're all learning how to drink from the hose. I feel like this is a life lesson I'm going to teach you right now. And if you need a drink, just go right over there.
A whole new
you don't have to ask me. You don't have to ask me.
drinkers.
Just make sure you turn it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Turn it off. That's the key.
Yeah. What's it like working with your spouse? Because my wife jokes all the time. So I had some miserable attempts at trying to work in normal 9-to-5 world.
Right.
And so then had worked for myself for a long time. And Courtney, my wife, has always worked 9-to-5 world.
Right.
Well, now that we have kids, it's being harder to work in the 9-to-5 world.
Right.
And so I always joke, I'm like, well, you could just come and be, you know, you could come and work with me. And sometimes we think to ourselves, like, this is a day that wouldn't work.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm just curious as to what that dynamic is like.
I will say that when we were not working together, we would have like long weekends, and I would by the end of the long weekend be like, "Oh, good, going back to work." this has been a lot of together time. And so the first year that we were in business together, I always say we were in the first location on Broadway, a house, and there was an apartment in the upstairs, and I used to regularly apologize to the person in the apartment. I know that you can hear us. But it was tough because of that element of that sort of we're together all day, every day. Now in our office next door, his office is in the very front and mine is in the very back. And we try to spend a lot of time independently.
Sure.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the only thing that I think is really challenging about it as we have moved on is it's still very difficult for us to call an end to the work day.
Right.
So we do a lot of over dinner continuing discussions about things. And sometimes we have to be kind of mindful of saying, okay, this is enough. We gotta come up with another topic. But what has worked for us is, and of course, I'm an accountant, have the professional background, and am comfortable in the accounting world. But the part of the business that I embraced was the people. And we have probably, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of our clients have some kind of small business enterprise, which I kind of always just have found exciting.
Sure.
They're exciting kinds of personalities that come through the door with their idea. And so helping them make that idea a business and to scale and grow that idea into something that is their livelihood just has always been part of the adventure for me. Now, my husband would be very happy to be with his adding machine at his computer all day, every day. That's his happy place. He chose that. He was an accounting major. He, went right out into public accounting, and it has been a great fit for him. Everybody asked him now, when are you retiring? And he's like, why?
To do what?
Why?
Right.
I love this. So,
I think that's an interesting perspective, because sometimes when people will start a business, I didn't have any idea. You have two different sides. You have whatever you do, right? So you do accounting. Right. But then you have customer acquisition. Right. And those are two very different things. You have to process the work, but when you're the business owner or the entrepreneur or whatever, you have to also create the work. Right. And I think that's two different sides of that coin that not a lot of people think about. I might be the best graphic designer, but if I don't have anybody that wants graphic design work, it doesn't matter. Right. And it's interesting because you have to really get into those, and we kind of have always done the front end consultation at no charge, because it's sort of that, are you a fit for us? Sure. Are we a fit for you? We're going to figure this out together. But really trying to meet people where they are. And for some people, and I'll tell you, a lot of it is also very industry specific. I mean, a person that is going into a business that requires a lot of administrative capacity is usually a lot better at the compliance piece, that is tax and accounting work. That's the opposite of me and you. But creative personalities, they really struggle. And the thing is, it's really about kind of tailoring a relationship where you can pick up where they leave off, and being mindful of the fact that, a small business can't afford necessarily to write a huge check for that level of support. So part of it is kind of coaching them to do some of the work so that they can limit the amount of times they have to call you. That's exactly right. The cost of calling us in and saying, turns out QuickBooks isn't as user friendly as they promised me. Yeah. So it's not a cookie cutter solution for every person, and I think that's what really keeps it interesting. For sure. There's nothing I like less than QuickBooks accounting. I think paperwork.
That's actually my first tax season using Miss Houk here, and I literally, the first email I wrote, I'm like, listen, it was a really long paragraph. It should have been more paragraphs. I didn't cut it right, but it was just like my mind talking. Your English teacher would have been upset. Oh yeah, Mr. Crabtree was mad. But it was a run-on sentence of all of my feelings. I'm like, listen, taxes are the thing that makes me more anxious than anything in the world. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Like literally, that's what it broke it down to. She made it super easy.
Well, and you know, I think that it's interesting because I think that's part of it is recognizing that, and everyone in your shoes always feels the need to like apologize,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm sorry that it's like this for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I always say like, okay, the other part of my life is that like my kitchen sink is leaking right now. You know, like there are things that are happening in the rest of my life. I just happen to be really organized, and
in this aspect,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think that's what makes people so fascinating is that everybody's got a different set of gifts and talents. And
well, when I bring, a bunch of napkins, they got coffee stains on them. I'm like, this is what I did the first quarter.
This is how many miles I drove, I swear.
Yeah, right?
So we've seen it all in every possible format. So yeah,
I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine.
It's still the worst, but I can imagine.
Yeah. You're involved in a lot of things. What currently are you involved in around Grove City, outside of the business?
Okay, so currently I am the treasurer of the Southwestern City Schools Educational Foundation. I have been a board member there since I believe 2015 is when I started. I love that organization, which provides scholarships for graduating seniors in the district as well as classroom grants. And so that process is kind of any teacher in the school district can write a proposal of something that they want to get accomplished in the classroom and that doesn't maybe have another funding mechanism in place for it. And we take those and fund those with dollars that we raise through relationships with people in the community and partner organizations and corporations in the community. So really, really have enjoyed that involvement. I try to kind of stay active in community organizations that I was already a member of. So really, having a business, we opened our business in fall of 2000, and we've always been down here in the town center. Got involved in the town center organization first because I love the, kind of this historic heart of our community. And that was kind of where I first got involved from a business perspective, got involved in the Chamber of Commerce, served on that board, got involved in the We Lead Committee, which is the women's leadership committee of the Chamber, started the We Lead Half Day Forum. That was me one morning rolling into a meeting saying, you know what, let's do a half day thing. And everybody was like, let's do it. And now I think this is like 11 years. That's right. You make that happen.
Careful spouting off good ideas.
That's right. Well, and it's, I think that has been kind of the nature of the beast is that you want there to be great things. I wanted there to be great things for my kids in school, and you get involved, right? Yep. You don't sit back and wait for the great things. Right. You say, hey, I got to roll up my sleeves, and what do we need done? Who can help me? And that to me has been one of the best parts of this community, and I think that's part of the reason why there is so much community hometown loyalty here is we really value relationships. And when you put out a call and say, I really need this, someone is always there to do it, So really it just becomes a matter of extending the invitation. And there's always somebody that is willing to say, and sometimes it's people that you wouldn't even have expected to be the one raising their hand and saying, I can fill that need. Sure. But people kind of pick up where the others leave off. And I think that's what's, we can definitely attribute our success in maintaining that. Again, really just a focus on relationships between people.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you said, you wanted great things for your kids.
Yeah.
So our first daughter's 7, so she's going through like first grade and second grade all for the first time. And so Courtney found herself on PTA, and which is just hilarious in and of itself. And, you get involved in things, you're like, I never thought I would be involved in this. Right. And, it's just funny. She was on like the face painting crew for their father-daughter dance. So for 3 hours, she's sitting on a bench, painting girls' faces, and she goes to sit up like at the end of it. She's like, I didn't know this is what I was volunteering for. And sometimes, you just don't know, but you're going to do it for your kids or your community or your, your business, whatever it is.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and I did the same things, and really for that, the same reason of just, somebody needs to do it, and
Right.
and that you want the experience and the environment to be positive for your children, and so you do it, and one thing becomes the next thing becomes the next thing, and that's when your husband says, just say no.
Just say no, right?
Just
get a T-shirt. Just say no.
Saying yes.
Yeah.
So, but then, probably I will go back to when we were in our first location and we needed to get a sign out front. And I kind of
That's a process in and of itself.
That's right. I got my first glimpse of how government works and how things work in the city of Grove City, and kind of navigating that process. And then, we moved to another location, which had a completely different set of rules for signage in that location. So did it again. And then, our project here, we needed a whole different set of approvals and a development plan when we redid the front of the building. So I think that kind of participation really kind of sucked me into the world.
Involuntarily, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I just wanted to try to run a business.
That's right. I just wanted to do this, and I'll come to these meetings.
Yeah.
But that for me was kind of an appeal to my inner, I always have been probably accused of having a very passionate sense of right and wrong.
That's the old apartment people.
That's exactly right. They knew I had a passionate sense of something.
Yeah.
So that really kind of just piqued my curiosity, and I started attending city council meetings, and that kind of was my springboard into deciding that I would run for city council. So that's my other thing, is as the Ward 3 representative, and again, lots of, I say it's like I always describe it as a love-hate job. It's like the highest highs and the lowest lows. When you can solve a problem for someone, you feel like, yeah, this is why I'm here. Other times you feel a little bit like, what was I thinking? This is the most
thankless job in the world.
What was I thinking? This was not a good idea. So, but I will say it again, that job has showcased for me really that whole element of relationships being at the heart of what makes this community great. Really have just met amazing people, and we have an amazing team of people at the City of Grove City that I've had the opportunity. I often say the first year I was safety chair, and which I kind of was like, what do I know about that? Okay, we'll see what we can learn. And but getting that kind of glimpse into all of the departments of the city that funnel into that world of safety, and getting to know the people that are making it happen every day, the things that you take for granted. And so now it's like, if anything, if there's an accident on the road, I'm not automatically jumping anymore to, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 15 minutes late. I can't believe this. I'm automatically thinking about who's responding and what needs to be done, and how, and it always happens. It's not my doing, but the people that mobilize behind every single thing that happens, and all of the amazing events that we have. It's not just the community partners that are making those things happen, but also the city staff that are always working in support. And again, that's what makes it great. Yeah.
To somebody who might not understand or have that level that you have, how would you explain what city council is to them? Somebody maybe from the outside.
Well, I'll tell you, city council for me, and I'm the job has made me an even more passionate believer in participation in the process, that it shouldn't feel like it's something that happens to you. It should be something that you are part of. And the representatives that you put into place to be your voice should be people that you feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling them, talking with them about your thoughts or things that are impacting you that they may not be thinking about. It is in a world where, there's what happens in DC and there's what happens in the State House. that feels so external to you, right? That it's sort of outside of your control. These are just these things that come from on high, and we all have to deal with consequences. Local government is so first person. And I always say, can't stress to people enough how important it is. Low voter turnout in local elections is just a thing. It's notorious. Sometimes the numbers of registered voters versus those who are participating on election day are just so discouraging, really.
Sure.
But I would say that I cannot stress enough how I really do feel that your voice in that process is so, so important. And I've been very lucky to have an amazing team of colleagues who really pursue the job the same way.
Sure.
You can pick up the phone. You can say, hey, let's meet for coffee. It's not
this
something.
is an issue we're dealing with.
Correct.
You know who to talk to. Maybe I live in my own world, but this is an issue I experience, and you know who to talk to.
Help me navigate. Well, and I think that's, kind of my observation, and it's sort of what I've learned from day one trying to get a sign for my own business. But a lot of it is not that it's really also difficult. It's just that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, right.
And you don't know how, who is it that you're calling? You don't understand the whole organizational
you don't know where to direct
structure.
it.
That's right.
Right.
So that, to me, is the key part of this role of member of council, is that kind of, I am going to take your hand and I'm going to pass you to the person that is going to be able to solve this for you.
Right.
Yeah. We don't have that power authority. But
sure,
people,
but you know who does.
I know who does.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right. But
And
awesome.
I think a big misconception is that they think that you are that
Yes.
hand of power instead of that liaison through
Right.
that knows the information, that knows the people. Because I can tell you, I know who my ward councilman people are, but I also know them in a personal aspect, right? And I think a lot of people just don't know what to do. Like, okay, I want something done, but I don't know who to call. I don't know who represents me, because some people just don't know.
Right.
And so it's interesting.
because they're getting kids to soccer practice
Right.
and they need to pick up the dry
I
cleaning.
got my own life.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until you need someone,
Mm-hmm.
and then
And then you're usually angry at that
and then
point.
there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I don't get that many calls that are like, I just want to tell you how great things are.
That call doesn't happen.
That's all.
No,
It does on occasion.
That's other passionate people
on
calling.
occasion. But it is completely understandable that
Sure.
and I think that is the intriguing part of realizing that there are over 42,000 people living in this city. And it's just like we talked about on my way in, how, you have your paths and the places you go and the things you see. So having eyes everywhere, which again is our team, our public service people, our people in law enforcement with the Division of Police, even the Jackson Township folks, that they have their eyes on things, and continuing nurturing those relationships and talking, always keeping those connections going is really kind of what allows us to make sure that we've got our eyes on the things that we need to have our eyes on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's, perspective, right?
Yes.
We're bring the whole thing back to perspective. Is you and the rest of council provide a different perspective.
Yes.
And hey, you might have the issue you're dealing with, but it can relatively easily be solved if you can get, part of the issue you're having is you don't know who to talk to,
Right.
or you don't know where to go. And if I can get you here, I think we can solve what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's a job for me. It's I'm always learning.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
I'm learning from the people that I'm talking with in the community. I'm learning from the people on the city's team. And when you can pursue it like that, like even sometimes there isn't a perfect answer. There's not an answer today.
Sure.
Let's figure out how we can work to a solution. Kind of just always being willing to look at it from every side, and sometimes we can be better. How do we do that though? Yeah.
Patience is key.
Yes.
I like that.
Patience when trying to deal with government entities.
At all times.
Yes. Well, we really appreciate your time this morning and coming out. What would you tell someone who maybe wants to get involved? Like, where is a good place to start now that you have the perspective that you have? If someone said, hey, I didn't grow up here, but I'm going to live here. I'm going to raise my family here, and I'd like to be involved, even if it's just to meet people. You know, they're not trying to, you know, change policy or whatever. They just wanted to be involved and learn more about the city. Where would someone like that, where would they start?
Well, I think that, you know, in all of our big community partner organizations, the City of Grove City, the Chamber of Commerce, the Heart of Grove City organization, Visit Grove City, the Visitors Organization, I think you can find kind of the who's who of places that you could plug in according to your own talents or the things that you might be passionate about, because I think that's kind of deeply personal for, you know, for each individual.
Sure.
But I will say that I think that the probably the way to fit yourself in is to where those things happen organically, just like you're saying with the PTA.
Sure, you're passionate about
something, family.
Or you have a reason to be there.
That's right, you have a reason to be there. Or coaching girls soccer team for the first time ever. So it really plugging yourself in places that just are a fit for you,
sure.
and yet just kind of pushing it a little, taking it a little bit to the next level. Right. I think that those are it really for me has been a matter of doing those things, and then in those relationships that you form in that first environment and the second environment, you usually have someone that says, you know what, we could use you here. Right. That's right. And I think it just happens that way, where it just unfolds without really intention.
Sure.
But works out just the way it was supposed to be. And I think that's for me, anywhere where I have felt I have something to offer. And to be perfectly honest, there have been times when I'm like, okay, this wasn't for me. You know, like this isn't for me.
And sometimes that's an important thing to do.
That's right.
Whether it's, you mentioned earlier, don't take that client. It's not a good fit. Don't force it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a big piece too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for
appreciate
coming
both
in,
of
and
you.
best of luck in everything you're involved in.
I again thank you for everything you do in the community, and can't wait to see where we are in 20, 30 years.
Right.
That's all
when
you.
You said 2000, when you said 2000, it's crazy to me to think that was 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm. You know that.
You made me feel. What are you about to say? 2
years, we have our 20-year class reunion, right?
I should know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just say yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. That's crazy.
Okay. Anyway.
I remember as a kid, mom and dad being like, "I'm going to our 20-year anniversary," and thinking,
"Oh, they're old." Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It is crazy. I had a conversation with my son recently where he used they are older, and I said, "Well, what is that?" And he's like, "In their 50s," and I'm like, Cameron,
don't say it.
Don't say I'm 53. You can't say in your 50s. And he was like, "Well, I don't. You're not old, Mom." And I'm like, "Well, it's too late now."
Right, you let that cat out of the bag.
My 10-year-old had a substitute. This is a couple weeks ago. He had a substitute at school, and I go, "Well, how was she? You know, like, was she nice? Did you guys have fun? What'd you do?" And he goes, he said, "Well, she was old." And I go, "Oh yeah?" And he goes, "Yeah, she was in college still." "Oh, what's that make me?" He's like, "Oh, you're not old, Dad." I'm like, okay. Well, we know what you're telling your friends.
Yeah,
one of my favorite gigs was I was a kindergarten aide at Our Lady, and that was right after we had actually started our business. I went over and helped Mrs. Schmidt with kindergartners, and my favorite exercise was the Mother's Day. You asked questions about their mom, and of course I knew all their mothers, and would just sit there just shaking, quietly writing their answers about, how old is your mom? Yeah. She's she's old. 15?
Right. What's old to them?
15. I'm going with it. She's real old.
Your mom's
15.
going to be excited.
That's exactly right. You're going to make
or maybe not, I guess.
You're going to make her Mother's Day. That's right.
Right. One way or the other. You're going to make her Mother's Day.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care, guys.